Hello, everyone. Um, Thanks for being here with us tonight and for being a little early. Um, my dad always told me that if you weren't 5 minutes early to a meeting, you were late. So, hey, well done. You've passed my dad's standard. We welcome you to the Heber Valley Corridor Environmental Impact Statement virtual meeting and Q&A. Um, we are planning to get started right at 6 o'clock. And so for the next 3 or 4 minutes, feel free to just kind of settle in. Um, we'll have a presentation um, first thing after we do just some introductions. And one thing that you could do while you're on here waiting, there's a should be a sign-in form in the chat. You can click that link, and that's just for our record keeping. It's for the public record, and will only be used to monitor attendance and just some other data collection if you're willing to share it. Um, you can fill out as much or as little as you would like, and it's just helpful to us for planning future public engagement efforts. So again, click that link and fill that out while you're waiting, and we'll begin here in 2 or 3 minutes. Welcome again. Hello again. Just letting those of you who are joining know that we will be starting in about a minute. Um, if you're just waiting and anxiously anticipating the presentation, there's a link in the chat that takes you to a sign-in form. If you'd like to click that and fill that form out with as much or as little information as you'd like while you're waiting, that would be helpful to us for future engagement efforts. Thanks, and we'll get started here shortly. Okay. Hello and greetings again. I've already greeted several of you a couple of times, but we do want to be respectful of everyone's time, and so we're going to get going here right at 6 o'clock. We appreciate you joining us tonight for the virtual meeting and Q&A for the Heber Valley Corridor Draft Environmental Impact Statement virtual meeting and Q&A. As you've already learned, if you joined us, this is being presented in a webinar format, and that's meant so that our presenter can go through the information very clearly. And once the presentation is over, the question and answer uh, box will be opened up, and you'll be welcome to submit questions, and we'll proceed from there. And I'll get into a few of the details here in a minute. My name is Justin Smart. I am with the public involvement team, and I'll be moderating the meeting tonight, along with several other members of our team who you won't see that are operating in the background to make this go smoothly. This meeting is being recorded as part of the project record, and it will be available to view on the project website tomorrow. So if you have friends or family, other members of the community that may have missed this and would like to view it, they can do that there at our study site. I'd like to just take a quick minute to introduce some key members of our project team who will be presenting and answering questions tonight. You can see a number of them here on the slide, and I'm just going to introduce a few of them. First of all, we have Craig Hancock, who is our UDOT project manager. Some of you have interacted with Craig a fair amount already. Naomi Kissen is the UDOT environmental program manager. Andrea Clayton is our consultant project manager. Sarah Regard is the environmental lead on the consultant team. Tim Peterson is our traffic lead. And then we have John McPherson, who is our National Environmental Policy Act advisor. Some of you may have heard of NEPA. That's the process that we're following with this EIS. So if you've ever wondered who reads all the comments that come in and have read all the comments that have come in prior to this phase, this is the group. We want to just provide you an overview of how the meeting will go. If you've downloaded our virtual meeting guide, you'll have become familiar with some of these steps. But before we jump into the presentation and Q&A, just to give you an idea, first of all, Craig and Naomi are going to do a presentation that hits the highlights of the draft environmental impact statement. And then the meeting and the chat are being recorded as part of the project record. And we want to just let everyone know that while we will have a Q&A portion of the meeting, and we'll try to make that as lengthy as we can, we may not get to all questions. And so if you submit a question that isn't answered, we would invite you to submit that as a comment using one of the methods that we've provided to the public. And then we'll work our way through those questions in the order they're received. And the questions during this meeting tonight are not considered formal comments. So while we'll try to answer those for you to maybe clarify your understanding of something and give you a better opportunity to comment, if you'd like to make a formal comment, please submit that through the channels provided. We've posted a link here in the chat about the virtual study guide. And so that's something you can pull up and reference as we go along tonight as well. An important point, comments which are made publicly through the online tools like this hearing should follow our UDOT social media policy participant code of conduct. And you can see that language here in the chat as well. And so we welcome and encourage comments, conversation, and feedback reading this for those who may not be able to see the chat. To maintain a professional space where ongoing communication can take place, please be advised of the following. Foul language, threats, obscene comments, and other unacceptable comments, content, and posts will be deleted at the administrator's discretion. Spam and off-topic or other similar posts and comments will also be deleted at the administrator's discretion. So just be aware of that. We want to make sure that we maintain a high level of dialogue and civility, and provide everyone an opportunity to express themselves. Another reminder, I noted this before we got started, but there is a sign up for the meeting tonight. it does become part of the public record and gives us good information to guide future public engagement efforts. So if you would take a minute at some point tonight during the presentation or the Q&A, just to click that link and fill out that information, we would appreciate it. As you're following along with the presentation, if you can't see any of the graphics clearly, maybe you want to zoom in on something, take another look. All of what will be presented is either in our summary video, in a fact sheet, on our display boards, or on a scroll plot, all of which are available on our study website. And while we're talking about the study website, we did want to make you aware of a technical issue we experienced early in the comment period, just in the interest of transparency. Between when the comment period started January 9th and January 26th, any comments that were submitted via the website form, this only applies to the website form. If you included an attachment, that comment did not come through. It didn't make it to us. If you did not include an attachment and you submitted it through the website, it came through just fine. We just wanted to make you aware if you did include an attachment on the website, we would invite you to submit your comment and your attachment again. That was resolved as of January 26th, and everything is working fine now. But we just wanted to make you aware, again, to be transparent with everyone, make sure all of the comments that you want to make are received. So with that, appreciate you letting me walk through some of the logistics tonight. I'm going to turn the time over to Craig to give everyone an overview of the study. He and Naomi will walk us through some good information, and then we'll review a few things and jump into Q&A. Thank you.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us online. We're going to spend a few minutes tonight just going over high level the purpose of the project, describe what the project is, and go over a few things, about a 25-minute to 30-minute presentation, and then we'll open that time up then for questions. So I'm gonna turn the next few minutes over to Naomi, who will cover a few slides about purpose and need and the process that we've been going through in the environmental process.
Thanks, Craig, and thanks everyone for taking time out of your evening to join us. I'm going to start off by going over the purpose and need for the project, and that's because the purpose and need is really the foundation of of everything we've done from the beginning moving forward. So the purpose and need of the project is a statement of the goals and objectives that the study is going to address. That's the purpose. And it identifies the existing or future conditions that we want to change, and that's the need. And that purpose and need drives the environmental study process and lays the foundation for the alternatives that we develop. The purpose of this project is to improve regional and local mobility on US 40 from River Road, or SR 32, to US 189, and provide opportunities for non-motorized transportation while allowing Heber City to meet their vision for the historic town center. After we established the purpose and need, we started the alternative screening process. So we developed concepts, and then we evaluate the concepts in greater detail during the alternative screening process that we completed in March of last year. And that's a multi-step process that focused on how well the alternatives we developed met the purpose and need of the project and the potential environmental impacts related to those alternatives. We evaluated the regional mobility component through metrics like travel time on the new corridor and the number of couplet points like intersections and driveways. We evaluated local mobility through things like performance on Main Street during the PM peak hour, so the busiest hour, and using metrics like level of service or how long it takes you to get through an intersection. We also considered the travel time on Main Street and the queue length, so how far traffic backs up at key intersections. To pass level 1 screening, the alternatives needed to be compatible with Heber City's vision for the historic town center, which calls for lower speed limits, pedestrian and bike-friendly design, landscaping, and a community gathering place. Both alternatives A and B passed level 1 screening. So after that, we refined them to include a shared use path and also evaluated potential impacts to key resources like wetlands, historic buildings, archaeological sites and houses, and businesses in the level 2 screening component. Both alternatives A and B also passed through level 2 screening, which allowed us to evaluate the benefits and trade-offs in greater detail in the draft EIS that we are reading about today. To help inform our decision-making, federal guidelines also require that we look at what's called a no-action alternative, which is the baseline that we compare alternatives A and B to. Under the no action, we project traffic conditions in 2050, assuming that no major improvements associated with this project are constructed.
I'd like to take a few minutes and go over alternatives A and B. Those are the two alternatives that passed our initial screen that we just discussed. I wanted to give a brief description of both options, their respective advantages and disadvantages, and the reasoning behind why UDOT selected alternative B as the preferred alternative. I'll begin with alternative A. Alternative A is proposed to be a 4-lane controlled access freeway that combines improving the existing US 40 north of 900 North with a new route around the west side of the city. The design uses bridges, ramps, and grade-separated interchanges to allow traffic to flow continuously without stopping at signals or stop signs. Access would be limited to specific locations, shown as the white circles on the figure on the left. The existing US 40 north of 900 North would be rebuilt with 2 lanes in each direction, a central barrier, and a speed limit of 55 miles per hour. A system of discontinuous frontage roads would be included along US 40 to group together local driveways, access points, improving safety and traffic flow on the main highway. This section of North US 40 includes new interchanges at River Road or SR 32, Potter Lane or College Way, and Coyote Canyon Parkway. At 900 North, main corridor traffic uses ramps to transition to the new western route, while traffic entering or leaving downtown Heber would use a standard traffic signal like the signal that exists there today. The new western corridor has a 65 mile per hour speed limit and features a 50-foot wide median connecting 900 North to US 189 near Southfield Road. The western corridor includes 2 new interchanges, one at 1300 South and one at SR 113 or Midway Lane. At 1300 South, there would be an elevated highway section for through traffic and parallel one-way frontage roads below for local traffic to have access to local roads and commercial areas. A paved 12-foot wide trail is planned along the corridor, ensuring active transportation options for pedestrians and cyclists parallel to the highway. Alternative A is estimated to cost $711.9 million if it were built now, though this will change in the future based on final design and the construction year when the project is funded. Here's an overview of Alternative B. As you're coming from the Park City area, Alternative B would be a 4-lane controlled access freeway that creates an alternate route to US 40 between Potter Lane or College Way and 900 North through the North Fields before traversing the west side of Heber City, connecting to US 189 and South US 40. Like Alternative A, access to the main freeway is restricted to free-flowing ramps and grade-separated interchanges, ensuring a continuous flow of traffic. The US 40 north of downtown Heber City will become an arterial street or major street with a reduced speed limit of 45 miles per hour. To handle local traffic, the existing North US 40 would include a new or upgraded traffic signals at Potter Lane or College Way, Commons Boulevard, Coyote Canyon Parkway, and 900 North. The new high-speed 65 mile per hour freeway section through the North Fields provides a direct route with 4 lanes and a wide safety median. The 900 North segment includes an additional interchange connecting the North Fields extension to the Western Corridor section. The Western Corridor and 1300 South sections of Alternative B are identical to Alternative A, featuring the elevated 13 South section and the interchanges at SR 113 and 1300 South. A multi-use trail is planned to run parallel to this new corridor as well. If constructed today, Alternative B would cost approximately $760.5 million. Yeah, I'll switch. Yeah, thank you. This table shows this table of evaluation considerations shows the primary considerations we use for evaluating Alternative A, which is in green, and Alternative B, which is in orange. The primary advantages for Alternative A are fewer impacts to resources in the North Fields, primarily wetlands and farmlands. Alternative A also has fewer noise impacts, mainly to planned developments in the North Village area. The primary disadvantages of Alternative A are that it does not perform as well from a transportation perspective and would have more impacts to homes and businesses. Another disadvantage of Alternative A is the less than desirable driver experience. This includes out of direction travel, slower overall speeds, and tight curves on the directional ramps at the 900 North and US 40 connection. Looking at Alternative B, the primary advantages are related to transportation performance. It provides the best regional mobility through faster travel times, a more direct travel path, and higher speed limit. Alternative B provides the best local mobility because it does a better job of removing regional traffic from Main Street, resulting in less congestion and better operations on Main Street. It is also less disruptive to the local road network and planned developments in the North Village area, where North US 40 could still be used for local access. Alternative B provides an alternate route to North US 40 for a longer distance, and it also results in fewer impacts to Section 4F historic buildings and fewer residential and business relocations. The primary disadvantage of Alternative B is greater impacts to wetlands and farmlands in the North Fields. UDOT has identified Alternative B as the preferred alternative. I would like to highlight a few reasons why. First is best for regional mobility, offering faster and more direct travel. Alternative B is about 15% faster than Alternative A, depending on the route. And because Alternative B offers a more direct travel route and better travel times, it does a better job of attracting traffic from Main Street, which is why it is also best for local mobility. It provides the best traffic operations on Main Street with fewer failing intersections and shorter queues on Main Street. Alternative B would pull more regional and truck traffic off of Main Street with less cut-through traffic on local roads as compared to Alternative A. We've heard that this is important to the community. Overall, Alternative B is projected to attract about 30% more traffic to the corridor west of downtown Heber City compared to Alternative A. Another reason to highlight is that Alternative B significantly enhances the overall transportation system by providing a dedicated alternate route to US 40 between Potter Lane and 900 North. This means that this alternative can accommodate a higher volume of regional traffic, which in turn permits the existing North US 40 to better serve the needs of the local traffic. This separation of local and regional traffic is key to improving both mobility and safety for all drivers. Unlike Alternative A, where regional and local traffic would continue to share North US 40, like the current conditions on Main Street, Alternative B provides a secondary route that would be less impactful to the community to construct and could serve as an essential option during emergencies. As mentioned previously, Alternative B would also require substantially fewer businesses and residential relocations. Alternative B would result in fewer adverse effects to historic buildings, which are protected by law referred to as Section 4F. And finally, there is more overall system capacity with Alternative B, which means it will provide a longer-term solution. Alternative B will be able to handle additional growth beyond what is being analyzed in the EIS, much better than Alternative A. The main drawbacks with Alternative B are the greater impacts to wetlands and farmlands in the North Fields. Throughout the study, UDOT has heard from the public and local government officials that they desire to protect the North Fields as open space. In response, and as a commitment to the community, UDOT is making two significant environmental commitments in the environmental document. First, the Heber Valley Corridor will be a limited access facility under UDOT's jurisdiction. There would be no access allowed beyond the interchanges and ramps identified in the draft EIS. This includes extensions through the North Fields for Alternative B. UDOT is committed to no additional interchanges between Potter Lane or College Way and SR 113 being built in the North Fields, other than the 900 North connection, which is not an access point. It just connects the new corridor to US 40. This lack of access will reduce the potential for induced development in the North Fields. Second, UDOT will strive to mitigate up to 100% of the impacts of the impacted wetlands by establishing a wetland mitigation in the North Fields. Both alternative A and B would require wetland mitigation. Mitigation ratios typically begin at 2:1, where 2 acres of mitigation are provided for every acre of impact, and could increase from there depending on various factors. Once designated, wetland mitigation sites have the potential to limit sprawl based on where they are located because they are protected in perpetuity and cannot be developed. Finally, this table summarizes the data discussed in the previous slides, illustrating how each alternative addresses the project's purpose regarding regional mobility, local mobility on Main Street, and impacts to key resources. For reference, existing conditions are highlighted in light gray, the no action alternative in dark gray, alternative A in green, and alternative B in orange. Regional mobility on the left side of the table is focused on the new corridor. Travel from SR 32 to US 189 is at about 300 south is expected to take about 7 minutes and 25 seconds with alternative A, or 6 minutes, 15 seconds with alternative B. Travel times from SR 32 to US 40 at about 1500 south is expected to take 8 minutes, 10 seconds with alternative A, and 6 minutes and 55 seconds with alternative B. Alternative B is about 15% faster than alternative A, depending on the route. Both alternative A and alternative B would greatly reduce the number of conflict points or driveways and intersections, which would improve safety. The local mobility criteria is in the center of the table and is focused on Main Street. As the no action alternative in dark gray shows, if no improvements are made, 5 intersections on Main Street are expected to fail during the evening rush hour, and traffic heading towards downtown at 500 North is expected to back up 3.2 miles, resulting in travel times of about 20 minutes, 30 seconds to travel from SR 32 to the hub intersection at US 189. With alternative A, there would be only one failing intersection. Traffic backups would reach 2/3 of a mile, and travel times would be reduced to 11 minutes and 50 seconds on Main Street. With alternative B, there wouldn't be any failing intersections. The traffic backups would be reduced to about 700 feet, and travel times would be reduced to about 10 minutes and 15 seconds. We've heard comments that saving only 1 minute of travel time on the new corridor with alternative B is not worth the impacts to the North Fields. As I mentioned earlier, the savings in travel time is only part of the story. Because alternative B is about 15% faster than alternative A, it does a better job of diverting traffic and trucks away from Main Street, which results in better traffic operations and safety on Main Street. This also supports Heber City's vision for a historic town center. Finally, on the right side of the table, you can see impacts to a few key resources, which highlight primary differences between alternative A and B. These are not all the resources evaluated and considered in the draft EIS. Alternative A would impact about 23 acres of aquatic resources, including wetlands. Alternative B would impact 54 acres. Alternative A would impact 4 historic buildings, meaning these are buildings that would likely be demolished, where alternative B would impact 1 historic building. Alternative A would require 27 residential business relocations, and alternative B would require 8 relocations. Alternative A would cost less than alternative B, but the difference in estimated cost is less than 10%. I hope this brief explanation has been helpful in describing alternatives A and B, their respective advantages and disadvantages, and why UDOT selected alternative B as the preferred alternative. I'd like to turn some time now back over to Naomi.
Thanks, Greg. All right. So we prepared some visual simulations of the alternatives in order to try to give you all a sense of what the alternatives would look like at key locations. If you'd like to look at these some more on your own, they can be found in Appendix 3.0 of the draft EIS, or also on the display boards and the maps that are available on our website. This slide shows a simulation of both alternatives A and B at 1300 south, looking east. The alternatives are the same in this area. Through lanes on 1300 south are elevated, as you can see, to allow regional traffic to move through without stopping. One-way frontage roads are at ground level on either side in order to provide connectivity to local roads and access to the commercial area that's near the hub. So here, if you look over on the right side, you can see the underpass at 300 West with Industrial Parkway south of 1300 South. This slide is also a simulation of both alternatives A and B at 1300 South, looking west towards the sewer fields in the distance. You can see, again, you can see the underpass at 300 West and the elevated lanes touching back down to ground elevation just beyond Industrial Parkway. Okay, this simulation is, again, of both alternatives A and B from Southfield Road at the railroad crossing. This view is looking southwest towards the Heber Valley corridor, and it's crossing over the railroad track. So if you look real close where it says underpass to railroad, you can see kind of what looks like to be almost like a little tunnel. Okay, this is a visual simulation of Southfield Road looking south. So again, both alternatives A and B looking south towards the sewer fields. Southfield Road would end in the cul-de-sac just south of 1200 South. So that's shown in the middle of the picture, slightly right of center. And in the distance, you can see the interchange that would be constructed in the sewer fields to provide the multi-directional access to 1300 South, US 189, and the Heber Valley corridor to the north. Okay, this here is a simulation of just alternative B from Muirfield Park, looking at 900 North and the new corridor through the North Fields. The multi-use trail would be located on the south side of 900 North, adjacent to Muirfield Park. And then you can also see the underpass at 600 West on the left side, where 900 North would pass over 600 West. On the right side, you can see a simulation of the vehicles traveling on the new corridor extending through the North Fields. And then alternative A, even though this looks similar to the situation parallel to the park, but it wouldn't have the extension through the North Fields. Okay. This is also a simulation of alternative B, viewed from existing US 40 as you travel down into Heber Valley from the north. The directional ramps at Potter Lane and US 40 are visible in the foreground, kind of right before the road disappears into the greenscape. The section of the corridor that goes through the North Fields is just right of center, but it's not highly visible due to the topography and vegetation and existing development in that area. Okay, this is a visual simulation of just alternative A at Coyote Canyon Parkway, so north of the downtown area. US 40 would cross over Coyote Canyon Parkway here, and there would be ramps providing access between Coyote Canyon Parkway and US 40. Alternative B would not have an interchange at this location. With alternative B, it would look similar to what it looks like today, but with an at-grade intersection and signal. Okay, this is a visual simulation of both alternative A and B looking east along SR 113 or Midway Lane towards the proposed interchange with the Heber Valley corridor. As I mentioned, the alternatives are the same at this location, and the Heber Valley corridor would cross over SR 113, and there would be ramps providing access between the corridor and SR 113. Okay, now we're going to pivot a little bit to talk about noise. For both action alternatives, noise levels for receptors, which are things like homes, businesses, parks, and schools, would be higher than with the no action alternative. It's worth noting, though, that for our analysis, we included both existing receptors and future receptors. So future receptors are planned development that is approved but not yet built. Alternative B would result in more total noise impacts compared to alternative A. However, many of those impacts are to those future planned development that has not yet been built. A total of 24 noise barriers were evaluated with alternative A and alternative B. Alternative B had 3 noise barriers that met the feasibility and reasonableness criteria and were therefore recommended for balloting, which will occur during the final design time for the project. The 3 noise barriers for alternative B are shown in light blue in the figure. There are 2 walls that are on the north side of 1300 South, so between 300 West and 800 West, and 1 wall on the east side of US 40 near University Avenue. Alternative A had 4 noise barriers that met the feasibility and reasonability criteria. 3 of these are the same as they were for alternative B, but there would be 1 additional wall on the south side of 900 North near US 40. The final decisions about whether or not to build a noise wall and the balloting of the impacted residents to determine whether or not they want a noise wall will occur during the final design stage of the project if a built alternative is selected. All right, so a little more about this process that we're in right now. As you all know, we're in the middle, not quite the middle of the 60-day formal public comment period. 60 days is the maximum time that we are allowed to provide for public comment based on current federal law. The comment period runs until March 9th. There are a number of different ways that you can submit a comment. They're all listed on the left. There isn't one way that makes it more important or more listened to the other. They're all equally weighted. Public comments, however, that are submitted during the public comment period, they're not a vote. They do help inform our decision, however. They're one of many inputs that we'll use to inform updates to the final document and our decision regarding the project. Primarily, comments are used to consider things that we might have overlooked. So mentioning things about property impacts or environmental impacts that have been overlooked is helpful. Comments are definitely more impactful when they're solution-oriented. So there are several things that help to make a great comment. One is if you clearly identify the issue or resource that you're concerned about and reference specific sections or topics in the DIF. And then also include any data, citations, or observations or personal experience that you have that support your comment. Comments can also be in the form of questions in addition to just statements. In the final EIS, we will respond to all substantive comments that are submitted during this public comment period. And let's see a little bit about the schedule. We are currently in the draft EIS phase, as we mentioned, through the beginning of March. After we receive all the comments, we'll take your feedback and use it and respond to your comments and use it to revise the final EIS, which we anticipate publishing along with the record of decision in summer of this year. When we do that publication, we'll also offer additional public engagement opportunities. Okay.
Well, thank you, Craig and Naomi, for giving us that overview. We want to remind everybody or let you know, if you're not aware, that there's a longer, more detailed version of this kind of EIS overview in video form on the study site. And we'll also, as a reminder to those of you from the beginning of the meeting, we'll be posting a recording of tonight's meeting on the website for people who couldn't come. So we're now going to switch into the Q&A portion of the meeting and want to walk through those steps just one more time for those who may have joined us in progress, um, and just hit some of the highlights. So as I noted earlier, we're about to turn on the Q&A function within Zoom. And so if you pull that box up on your browser or your Zoom app, that's where you'll submit your question. And then we'll be working through those questions in the order that they were received. Um, Putting a question in there doesn't necessarily guarantee that we'll be able to get to it, because we are, again, respectful of everyone's time. We've tried to leave about an hour to do this. And so we'll be working through them as we can, as many as we can. And then if we don't get to your question, you have a couple of options. Please join us tomorrow night for the public hearing at the high school. Or you can submit it as a formal comment through one of the channels that we've outlined earlier. Um, and then we would just ask everyone to please be respectful in the language that you use. So there won't be necessarily an open mic. Those will be submitted through the Q&A. I'll read the question, and then we'll have the members of the team who are most familiar with the answers share those with everyone. So the Q&A is now open. And we're going to invite the team to turn on their video so you can see all of the experts here. And we'll mute and unmute as we need to in this digital age we live in. And we'll just jump right in. The first question that has come in says, when would you expect option B to be completed? And I'll throw most things to Craig first, and then if Craig wants to pass it along, he can.
So I assume it's when do we expect construction to begin? Is how I believe I'm taking that.
That's how I would assume too.
Okay, yeah. So in the schedule that we're on right now, we're hoping to have a final record of decision later this summer. That will conclude the environmental study, and we're only funded to do the study. It'll be a number of years before we can see any kind of design or construction money brought to the project. In a normal process, we're currently programmed on our projects out to 2031, I believe. And so the soonest you could possibly see something is maybe 6 to 7 years from now, and that'd be the very, very soonest. Is there anybody else want to add to that?
Okay. Nobody jumped in, so we'll go on to the next question. Thank you, Craig. The next question is, please provide additional examples of, quote, environmental mitigation efforts by UDOT on the 2-to-1 ratio for impacted acres. Craig or Naomi, I don't know which one might want to jump in.
I'll let Naomi answer this one.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'm not sure if I'm 100% understanding the question, but with regard to wetland mitigation and mitigation in the North Fields, what we're talking about specifically is under Clean Water Act regulations and U.S. Army Corps kind of regs. When you impact a wetland, you're required to mitigate for it. And typically, when you're mitigating for those impacts on a project specific basis, there are certain ratios that are decided are appropriate to basically compensate for that mitigation. The Army Corps is responsible for determining what that ratio is, but what we have seen is that those ratios usually start at the very low end at 2-to-1 if you're creating a new wetland, and tend to go up from there, quite a bit higher, 10-to-1, 12-to-1 for things like preserving wetlands or kind of improving the quality of wetlands. So there's a large range of kind of the ratio that can be applied, but the mitigation we're talking about in this specific context is the mitigation that we part of compensating for impacts to federally regulated wetlands. And I don't know if that answered the question. Hopefully it helped.
Thank you, Naomi. Next question. We're moving right along. What is the exact cutoff date for residential structures included in the noise receptor inventory used for the baseline condition in this EIS?
I'll take that one too. And we also have our noise expert here as well. So the cutoff date for, can you read that again, Justin? I just want to make sure that I'm hearing it correctly.
Sure. What is the exact cutoff date for residential structures included in the noise receptor inventory used for the baseline condition in this EIS?
Okay, so in terms of, are you maybe they're asking like, what are we modeling? And so what we model are anything that's currently built and existing, plus anything that is a kind of an approved development plan. So if someone has submitted plans for development to their local government entity, and those plans have been approved, then we in our model we assume that those are there when we calculate how many receptors are impacted. And again, the receptors are things like homes, schools, those types of things. So it's not a date specifically, it's whether or not the plans for that development have been approved.
Okay, anything further from the team on that one? Okay. Thank you, Naomi. Next question. Do our comments actually make a difference in your decisions?
I'll make a couple comments here, and then I might pass it over maybe to you, Justin, to talk a little bit about that, or Andrea. They do make a difference. We rely heavily on the comments that are given to us. They help us inform the decisions that we're making, and they help us to see areas where we may need to spend a little more time investigating or looking at. And they can help us in in the final analysis and what we're doing. Andrew, would you like to, if you have any other comments to add to that?
I would just reiterate that yes, we are listening to all of the comments. They do make a difference. Often comments are contradictory, so some people are in support of the same thing that people are opposed to, so we can't make everybody happy. Also, just that some of the suggestions from the public are what led to the alternatives that we developed and studied in detail in the draft EIS.
Thanks, Andrea. Bree, I believe you had an example or two to share.
Yeah, to kind of Craig and Naomi and Andrea's point that the NEPA process, especially with public comments, and I think there was a great link in here that Justin dropped into the chat that kind of talks about UDOT's overall environmental study process and kind of the federal guidelines that govern that. And I just really wanted to hit on the point that Naomi made of, the public comments are a huge opportunity for the community to identify areas that maybe need more evaluation or to present, different options moving forward. Just an example on the Wasatch Front side, for instance, there was actually an additional comment and engagement period that happened as a result of some of the comments that we got on the draft EIS of saying, hey, actually, we think you might need to look at, I think one of the examples was roadless areas, a little bit more in depth. And so that was a really helpful substantive comment where people were taking a look at the analysis that it was done and said, hey, I think you need to look at this more. And that was something that the agencies were like, yeah, that's a great thing. We should do that. Or, for instance, thinking to some of the other options where, early on in this study, people have submitted examples of what alternatives could be, whether it was, rerouting US 189 or, taking a look at some of these new routes. And so those are the things that really are helpful in looking for. It's great, to say, I don't really like this, but I have a better solution and check this out. And here's the data to support it. That's really helpful. And those are the types of things that can help, really redirect where we're focusing our energy on. So not a vote, but like really good solutions have been achieved when people, submit thoughtful information. So
Thank you. The only thing I would add quickly is that the public input helps us winnow and drive toward a decision, but this is a decision making process, and so at the end there will be a decision, and as Andrea alluded to, we can't, the decision won't make everyone happy, but that doesn't mean that all of the comments weren't read, considered, and listened to. It's one aspect of the overall decision making process. So thank you for that question and for the responses. Our next question is how would the results of your sound noise impact study that was done in 2022 be pertinent now? Perhaps maybe getting at prior studies being looked at for current analysis. Maybe Naomi or Tyler.
Yeah, I'll go first and then Tyler jump in. So the noise analysis that we did is based on the actual design that we have right now. And so I'm not immediately familiar with 2022, or you're talking about the previous one, yeah. So it is specific to the footprint of the current design because things like elevation, proximity to receptors change with the changes in design, and those things all influence the results. And so I guess probably the easiest answer is that they don't really influence it because these results are specific to the design that you currently see, and that is the way that the noise modeling is done.
And I would just want to add one thing. There's a link in the chat to their noise technical report, which we're relying on for the draft EIS, was completed in 2025.
Yeah, as Naomi and Andrea were saying, the noise report is for this design. Whenever we have a new project or a new alignment, we need to start over on that noise modeling because things change, elevations change, building permits are issued, those sort of activities that can influence how the noise process and modeling can result. So while it's nice to see the old one, it doesn't really impact the new one.
Great,
And
thank
just
you.
to make sure speaks on it, and so for everyone's knowledge, that is why we revisit the noise study during the final design, because if there have been design changes, then that can also change the results of the analysis, and over time noise policy can change as well. So during the final design process, we will also revisit the noise analysis.
Yeah.
Great. I'll note also that as we're having some of these topics, there is additional information available on the study site, and some of our team are posting links to those resources. Like we just shared the noise technical report in the chat, so we'll keep an eye out for those as we go. Next question: would love to see more detail on the environmental areas that will be impacted. Craig or Naomi?
So, in our presentations, we've really just highlighted some of the key level impacts, but our document does cover pretty in depth all the impacts that environmentally to the built environment as well as the natural environment. It does talk about all those impacts, and so. If you open up the document and the different chapters, it does cover a lot of all those impacts, and it goes through each one of those.
I'll add, if you open up the document and you do that, and you feel like there's a resource that's being impacted by a project and we don't talk about it, that is a great comment. Those are the types of things that we want to hear, like, hey, this is there, it's not discussed in your document.
One thing
Great.
just specifically, if I could add, there's a lot of information out there. If you're specifically interested in impacts, you want to go to Chapter 3 of the draft EIS. Chapter 1 is purpose and need. Chapter 2 is alternatives. Chapter 3 is the affected environment and the consequences and the mitigation. Chapter 4 is 4F, and Chapter 5 is coordination.
Now, there is a lot of information available there. So if you're looking for details, we'd invite you to dig in. Next question. How does the bypass connect on the southern end? Is it a roundabout or a light? And would that hook in where the light is now by the hub?
That's a great question. Where we hook in at South US 40, it actually ties in south of the light at the hub intersection, and we use directional ramps that take traffic off of South US 40 and onto the corridor. And we do the same thing with our connection. Down on where we make the connection on 189 as well. So we use directional ramps so people can flow off and on the corridor onto US 40 or 189, wherever you're entering or exiting from. And if you want to get a more detailed look at that, if you go to our website, the project website, and on the front page, you could scroll down near the bottom. We have a couple of interactive maps that you can really scroll in and see how those connections are being made.
Great. Thank you. Next question on 1300. It looks like the elevated road has a lot of space under it. What is under the elevated road?
So the elevated road will be built on embankment. We call it embankment. It's the only space where we actually have space underneath is where we cross over some of those local roads, 300 West, US 189, and those under those local roads. Everywhere else, it's built up on roadway embankment.
And as a non-engineer, I would call that piled up dirt.
Piled up dirt.
Is that fair, Craig?
That's really compacted.
Yeah, there you go. Very compacted, piled up dirt.
Very, very
Great.
compacted pile of dirt.
Yeah,
Naomi?
I just wanted to throw in because I'm not sure if what was under the road meant like the material or why is the road so tall.
Oh,
And the answer for that is because of those roads, the local roads that go under, we need to have enough. We need to have the like the standard clearance, and so because of that, we have about 25. It's about 25 feet from the surface, and that is to allow those local road connection underneath.
yeah.
Okay, great. And I'll just make a note that if you have a question or a follow-up to your question, the method to get that in the queue is to put it in the Q&A. So we invite you to do that. We're going to keep moving along to get as many as we can. Assuming all the regulatory regulations are met and the project moves forward, when would final design and NTP be for construction?
Yeah, I think we sort of answered this a little bit earlier tonight, but yeah, right now there is no funding identified at all for design or construction, and it's following UDOT's normal process for prioritizing projects that takes a number of years to make that happen, and we're prioritizing this project along with projects that are all across the state. So the very, very soonest we could see something prioritized for funding and design would probably be 6 or 7 years from now. I don't know if that
Great.
answers the question, but
I think so.
okay.
And this is I think we can couple these together. When would either option begin? So I think you've just answered that
Yeah.
in terms of construction. Why is Heber's vision prioritized over environmental realities and residents' quality of life, especially when Heber contracted a consultant who said Main Street would never be walkable? Pedestrian plazas can be created anywhere, but you cannot relocate wetlands, aquifers, and farmland. Our water supplies should be top priority. Just look out the window and realize our dire water situation. I think that's a little more of a comment than a question, but the question led with, why is Heber's vision prioritized over environmental realities and residents' quality of life? So the rest we can consider a comment. We'd invite you to submit that, but balancing environmental versus quality of life. If you could chime in on that, someone.
I'll start, and maybe others can chime in as well. It's the partly the reason why it became part of our purpose and need to allow Heber City to be able to enact their vision for an historic town center was our focus is improving congestion and mobility on Main Street, and so all the alternatives affect how Main Street would operate. And it's not to say that these other things about the environmental impacts to the Northfields or these other considerations aren't important. They are, and we have been able to address those within the context of the environmental document. But we felt like the alternatives, any alternative that we had selected or reviewed, would have a direct impact on Heber City's vision.
I'll also chime in. So as part of the process, or the NEPA process, we typically look at approved planning documents from local municipalities to help guide our direction. And because Heber had an approved Envision Heber plan, that was part of what we pulled from to create the purpose and need. And that is consistent with, how we treat approved plans from local governments throughout our projects when we're going through the NEPA process. We look for those plans to help inform the decisions that we make.
Thank you. And again, that's a good example of a lot of that was a good example of a comment. We'd invite you to submit that to be a formal comment. Please help me figure out which of the links in the chat are the slides which were shared tonight. I have family members who this would be helpful to show to as well. So that's a great question, a great opportunity to just quickly reiterate for everybody that the information in the slides that you saw is available on the website already in various places. There are slides, there are information in the environmental document, other resources there. And then tomorrow we'll be posting this very meeting in its entirety on the website. So this person, if you want to share this with your family, this presentation that was given will be there in its entirety for them to review. Anyone else want to add to that? I just felt like a good kind of procedural one. Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Next one, in the draft EIS, Chapter 3, Figure 3.3-1, on the farmland evaluation area, why was all of downtown Heber City included in the area, given that the farmland protection area was only supposed to include land within a half-mile of the routes, and most of downtown Heber is not a half-mile away?
We may need to take a minute to go back to that table and look at that for a minute, unless
take it.
Just stab. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah, if you've got it.
So the evaluation area includes the no action alternative, which is Main Street. So it's an area our team set as we were analyzing farmland. So it's a buffer set on alternative A, B, and the no action alternative. So it's not specific solely to APAs.
And by way of translation, the no action alternative is if UDOT chooses not to do anything. And that would mean traffic would continue to flow, transportation would continue to flow down Main Street as it does now. So Sarah's saying that had to be looked at and included with the two alternatives. Great. Thank you, Sarah. Andrea, did you want to add anything?
I think Sarah hit the nail on the head, but just one more point on that is that we are looking at impacts to Main Street because our alternatives would impact Main Street, as Craig mentioned earlier.
Okay. Thank you. This is why we have the experts on the call.
Exactly.
Thank you for the overview info. Helpful questions. When will funding sources be identified and publicly available? So, Craig, you've alluded to funding not being identified, but when would that happen potentially? Where on the statewide UDOT priority list is this project ranked, especially given the funding?
As of now, that we don't have a project yet in the priorities yet because we haven't completed the study. Once we complete the study, then that I guess opens the door to begin having those kinds of conversations about priorities and how to prioritize projects. But at this point, until we really complete the study, at this, there isn't much we can do until we know exactly what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. These are good questions. That it's clear that our friends in Heber Valley have spent some time with the information that's available. Another question, which properties in option B will be taken? Perhaps an opportunity to clarify what a property take may be, what that actually is, and um, what properties are in that category.
Yeah, and maybe Andrew, you could start with that a little bit. I know we do have some great resources out there that talk about the different categories, those that are impacted versus those that we take, and we've gone through a lot here. So I don't know, Andrew, if you want to kind of cover that.
I'm just about to drop a link in the chat with there's two appendices that include all of the information specific to right-of-way impacts. Appendix 3C includes tables that list the impact by parcel, and it would indicate whether it's a full acquisition, a partial acquisition, or a relocation. And then Appendix 3D includes maps that show the property impacts to parcels, again, indicating whether it would be a full acquisition, partial acquisition, or relocation.
I will add that as we went through and studied the right-of-way impacts, there were, we did our very best to try to understand what we think those impacts are going to be. But really, there are some assumptions that were being made there to help us that we had to do, and so as the process, as the project, down the road, as things start evolving and individuals we are talked to about their properties, those and we learn more about those impacts to those properties, those things can change, or those assumptions could get updated and changed over time.
I think if you're asking, let me just add real quick, if you're asking specifically, where those properties are, you can find them in the tables and the maps that we just gave a link to. The businesses would be Betty's Cafe and Homeland Storage for alternative B. And there would be 6 residences, which are located at the west end of 1300 South, at the junction of US 40 and Potter Lane, and on the east side of US 40. I'm probably missing some, but they're all listed in that table.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that on the website, if you're a visual person, there's also some really great interactive maps of both alternatives that have layers with various, so including right-of-way impacts, but also other resources that are impacted that you can take a closer look at and zoom in and out and kind of get an idea for the, especially if you're concerned with a specific area. They're a good tool.
Great. Next question, can you describe more what is meant by wetland mitigation.
Maybe Naomi, you may want to kind of talk a little bit about this. And we sort of touched on this a little while ago.
Yeah, we've touched on this before, but I'll just maybe try to briefly summarize. Wetland mitigation is mitigation that's required for impacts to federally regulated wetlands. And so that is done, the Army Corps is the entity that approves the wetland mitigation. It is typically done at a ratio of, for project-specific mitigation, at a ratio of 2 to 1 or higher. And that is what we are referring to by wetland mitigation. If maybe the question is like, what does that look like? It can be creating a new wetland in some areas. It can also be improving the quality of a wetland. So it can, removing invasive weeds or, non-native willow species, those types of things. And sometimes it can also just be preserving wetlands. If they're really high quality wetland that is threatened by development, though, sometimes there's value, there is value in preserving that. And so depending on where you fall on that, that's where the ratio kind of applies, with the kind of the highest ratios being for preservation and the lower, closer to 2 to 1 being for creation.
Thank you. This next one, I'm not sure we can address on the fly, but maybe we have a link we could drop in the chat. Can you show a depiction of the crossing of the Heber Creeper rail line at the intersection of Southfield Road and 1300 South?
We do have the one visual that one simulated visual that kind of shows it off in the distance. I don't know if we can scroll back to that particular slide. If we have the ability to do that.
If we do, it's slide 14.
Okay.
We're getting there. Just give me a short moment.
And
Are you guys?
Maybe while Breeze.
Presentation. These are all these visual simulations are available in Appendix 3.0 and also just as graphics as part of the presentation and the boards on our website. So, we want to spend some more time looking at them and zooming in. There is the opportunity to do that.
So I'm not sure if this is exactly the viewpoint that the questions center around, but this does show, standing at the crossing there at Southfield Road, looking towards the southwest, and you can see the underpass for the railroad and how the corridor goes over the railroad there. And this, of course, would be the same for alternatives A and B.
Great. Next question, why not use 189 instead of 1300 South for an existing entry to the bypass? This is affecting our current community, not future planned developments. Sort of a design, perhaps traffic question.
One of the things that was key for this design is to have a really good connection between the western corridor and South US 40, and the more direct connection there lends it to be a much better. It ends up being it functions a lot better to draw that traffic off of the Main Street area and it's a more direct path to draw traffic off of 40 and Main Street onto the bypass.
And one thing that has come up in conversations that I've had with residents and other stakeholders in the valley is that 1300 South was identified. I'm going to get the date wrong. I think in the 1990s. Is that correct? I'm looking to the team.
2007
2006, early 2000s, as a corridor there for a future connection, and has been on the transportation plans, the approved plans for the valley since that time. And so this to Craig's point, it worked well from a traffic and design standpoint. It was also identified as a corridor for that purpose.
Let me add just one thing. Earlier on in the process, when we were looking at other alternatives, we did evaluate alternatives that did not have the 1300 South connection. They did not attract enough traffic away from Main Street for us to meet the purpose and need, and were eliminated.
That was looked at. Good addition, Andrea. Thank you. Moving on, trying to keep us moving to get to as many questions as we can. What ultimate roadway cross section, including future lanes and shoulders, is the right of way for this corridor being designed to accommodate?
If we can once again flip back to some of the slides, we can show a little bit more detail on that.
Yeah, which one do you want me to go to, Craig?
Let's look at slide 7.
Okay.
Maybe while Bree's getting that pulled up, we'll move on to the next question and come back. Who at NRCS? Oh, that was quick, Bree. Let's not move
very
on.
efficient.
Go ahead, Craig.
So this slide here does depict the different cross sections that we're using for the north section of the freeway that follows along existing North 40. That cross section is built to 2 lanes in each direction. Those lanes are 12 feet wide. We're using, I can't remember the number, 12-foot shoulders. A center median with barrier in this case, and then we have some distance between the main line and the frontage roads that we talked about that are about 20. I think they're 24 inches wide, and then there's some space after that frontage road where we include a trail section, and then moving down to the western corridor portion, same typical for the roadway. It's 2 12-foot lanes in each direction, 12-foot shoulders on the outside, 4-foot on the inside. And in this section, we do include a 50-foot safety median to help separate those 2 lanes safely. And then outside of that, we have out to the trail that sits out on the edge there, with some distance in between there, and a lot of that space between the trail and the roadway, we're using a lot of that area for stormwater detention. We want to be able to keep the drainage from the roadway and be able to keep that within our right of way, and we're using that extra space for that detention. And then down on the bottom typical there, you see the section that runs along 13 South. Once again, using 12-foot shoulders, 12-foot median, 12-foot lanes, 12-foot shoulders. The speed is a little lower through here. It's 45 miles per hour, and that's partially to help keep it within the 13 South corridor. We didn't want to impact. We didn't want to get it too wide where it started impacting homes and businesses. And so we've done our best to try to keep that within the prescribed existing right of way that's there today. And so down below with the frontage roads, these are one-way frontage roads, and once again to try to help contain that footprint overall. So hope that answers the question there.
Okay, I am going to invite all of us, myself included, to be as quick as we can. We have a bunch more questions, and so we'd like to get through as many as we can. That was not directed at you, Craig. That was inopportune timing. We've all gone on. So, next question: who at NRCS filled out part of the Appendix 3B farmland conversion impact rating forms? Can we see how the various criteria were calculated? Maybe one of our environmental team experts. Sarah, I see you kind of anxious.
Me to be quick, right? The name of the NRCS individual is on the form. It's in box 2. And this is a GIS-based exercise that looks at soil data, farmland data that is maintained by the NRCS, and we use our boundaries of the alternatives and to work through the form.
Great. Thank you. Next question. Will the wetland acres impacted in the Northfields be mitigated by purchase of wetland acres in the Northfields, or could they be anywhere?
Our intent is to mitigate as much as we can within the Northfields area. There's a lot of there's criteria that go into that. Like I think Naomi touched on a lot of those. It also involves willing sellers, but our intent is to purchase as much of the wetland and mitigate as much of the wetlands as we possibly can within the Northfields area.
Great. Thank you, Craig. Next question, a bit of a right-of-way question. What compensation is given to landowners for eminent domain?
We'll toss that one over to Eric.
Yes, we follow state and federal processes related to acquisition of property. The first step will be to ultimately identify when the project comes, what impact and what the design is of direct acquisition from the property, meaning if there is a direct acquisition from the property, then the following processes in general take place. We will hire an outside independent appraiser to appraise the property, and then that appraisal will be given to an independent review appraiser to review that appraiser's work. And after that, then it will be given to an acquisition agent. The general criteria is property will be looked at before. If it's not a total acquisition, it'll be looked at the before the acquisition, what was the value, and what is the value after. If there's a difference between that and the compensation, for instance, if you're acquiring an acre from a 10-acre tract, we pay for the 1 acre. Then we look at the remainder. The appraiser looks at the remainder to determine the direct, if there is any damages to the remaining property in the after condition. After that, it will come to UDOT to approve the compensation, and then from there it will be given to an acquisition agent to make the property owner an offer, and then through that process we will negotiate the final settlement with the property owner.
Great. Succinct summation of a very rigorous process. Thank you, Eric. Next question is about a pretty detailed design question. Alternative A has a ramp from 900 north to US 40 exiting from the right, creating a sharp curve. Why not have the ramp exit 900 north from the inside left lane with a more gradual curve, much like US 40 and I-80? This would keep speeds up and make less impact to business in the Smith's business corner.
I don't know if John wants to take a stab at that, but I think these are the kind of I think this is a good example of a comment that we'd be able to evaluate probably more fully down the road once the comment period is over. But
yeah, I'll just add, Craig, that's a great comment. We did look at that preliminarily, some of the bridge spans and what you can do getting across 900, and so there are variations that were looked in that area. So, but good comment.
Yeah, so please submit that one. This next one, Craig just answered a couple of questions ago. Does the wetland mitigation, or Naomi, I believe, did, does the wetland mitigation have to be along the corridor, or can it be moved to another location out of Heber Valley? Maybe you both did. The answer is it can be moved, but the intent would be to preserve or mitigate as much within the valley as possible. Is that fair, Craig?
Yeah, exactly. Like I say, we want to align the project with the desires of the community to preserve the open space, and one of the ways we can really do that is with the wetland mitigation within the Northfields area, and we're going to try to do that as much as possible. It's not to say we can't look elsewhere, but our strong desire is to see it happen in that area.
Yeah, and just to give the ticky-tacky nerdy answer, so we are prioritizing the Northfields technically the area in which you can provide that mitigation is based on watersheds. And so we would be limited to certain watershed boundaries in terms of where we could provide that mitigation. If we were to mitigate outside the Northfields, which we are hoping we can accomplish all the mitigation within the Northfields.
Great. Another design question. How will farms in the Northfields whose entrances are blocked by option B access their farms?
So with regards to access to farms, we are all the local roads that are out in the Northfields today. We are building bridges over those roads, so those roads will not be blocked. In addition to that, as we get into final design, our intent obviously is not to block, fields and such. So we could provide, there may be options we can look at down the road to look at providing access between fields. But those are kind of things that we would have to look at down the road. But our intent is not to block access to fields.
Okay. Industrial Way is a residential street now with 2 schools. It is not commercial. Why is Plan B so close to residents and schools? Why not just use 189? What is the specific answer, please? This was discussed a little earlier. Craig, did you want to sum up kind of where we landed?
Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to add to what we've discussed earlier. Like I say, it's been identified, well, for all the reasons we talked about earlier. I don't know. In the interest of time, I don't know if I want to belabor that in.
Okay. And the next question is very similar. Homes being close to 1300 South. Why isn't it being built further south? Raised road will be noisy throughout the neighborhood. That is another one that is a very substantive comment. And I think in the name of time, like Craig just alluded to, the 1300 South location questions, I'll touch on them, but we'll keep moving. Basically, traffic, better pull from Main Street. It was identified as a corridor on the plan, and there were farther south options looked at, but they didn't meet the traffic need as well to meet the purpose of the study. So we'll kind of let that stand as the 1300 South response, and we'll keep moving. We don't want to diminish the question. We understand where you're coming from. That's the answer. And if you'd like to discuss these further, this goes for all questions. We'd invite you to the public hearing tomorrow night, and we'll provide details about that. What will the height of the bridge be over 300 west at 13th South? What will the height of the through lanes 200 feet west of this bridge? Lastly, there is a 9-foot noise barrier that is recommended between 300 West and Industrial Parkway. How will this barrier be effective in reducing traffic noise if the through lanes are higher than the barrier? Kind of a technical design question.
Yeah, a couple technical design questions. Let's let our technical folks jump in on that.
Yeah, the profile 1300, as you go to the west, once you cross 300, we start to go down in elevation. So by industrial, we're 4 or 5 feet still above existing today. So that kind of gives you a reference point to see how that's coming down, just like any other road you're on that crosses a road underneath. So I don't know if anyone else wants to address the noise specific.
I think just one thing real quick before we go to noise is how high would the roadway section be? I think that was part of the question. It would be about 20.
Yeah, over 300 west, we're crossing, if you're driving, you always see those signs, 16.6 clearance. So we're providing that for truck traffic and all vehicle traffic. And then you have a bridge depth, so another 8 feet. So in the neighborhood of 24, 25 feet is your highest elevation. That's over 300 west. And then, like I say, as you continue west, you start coming down in elevation.
Does anyone want to chime in on the noise question? about the sound walls being lower than the travel lanes.
Can you just read that portion of the question again, Justin?
Sure. Lastly, there is a 9-foot noise barrier that is recommended between 300 West and Industrial Parkway. How will this barrier be effective in reducing traffic noise if the through lanes are higher than the barrier?
Yeah, within the noise model that we do, all those elevations are put into the model. And so the reason that that noise wall is considered reasonable and feasible is because it is effective within the parameters of the policy at reducing noise. And so, we do understand that, the movement of noise, however, there is still a benefit from that wall, and the benefit is substantial enough that the wall is recommended. So I guess maybe that's a roundabout way of saying that there is a benefit to the wall, because if there wasn't a benefit to the wall, we would not have our analysis would not have recommended it for balloting.
Yeah, to expand on that a little bit, the walls are, some people have a perception that noise walls will cancel out all the negative sound effects of a roadway or the noise of a roadway. They don't really work like that, but they do take the edge off of the noise for you. And so where the placement of that wall is kind of important. On that one, it looks like it's closer to the residents than the roadway to try to block it for those residents. And they're really effective in a couple of places, but that's where the model showed it would be effective in this situation.
Thank you. And I'm going to take a quick process point here. We anticipated getting to questions by 6:30, and we didn't hit that with wanted to be as detailed as we could in the presentation. So we'd like to extend our Q&A portion to another 10 minutes to 7:40. So be aware that we're going to keep moving. We're going to try to get through as many as we can by 7:40, but we wanted to add that time so we had that hour that we had promised everyone, and then we'll wrap up quickly right after that. So just so everyone's aware. Next question. Main Street will have thousands of new homes entering from the east side. It seems we need better Main Street solutions and internal traffic movement within Heber. How can we get things going now?
I think that's a great comment. Certainly, we feel like we're part of the solution, but we're not all the solution. I think we need to work together with Heber City and in that regard, and we're trying to support them as well in developing an overall traffic transportation plan for the whole area.
Great. What are your actual plans for environmental mitigation? If you run a road through the middle of the Northfields, it has been admitted you are impacting negatively the wetlands there. How do you offset this? Maybe less about where, but how the mitigation helps.
Yeah, Justin, I maybe would kind of, if not to dismiss the question, but I would maybe just kind of similar to, Judy, I think this is, I don't know that we would answer it any differently than we have for the other similar questions. We mitigate it based on ratios that are ultimately determined by the Army Corps of Engineers. In with regard to wetland mitigation, I don't think there's a whole lot more to say.
Okay. Maybe if you want to discuss that one further, again, come to the open house tomorrow night and hearing, and there'll be all of these members and others ready to discuss. Why are there not six lanes vehicle travel lanes on US 40 and the bypass? There is enough space in the areas already controlled by UDOT.
I'm not sure what that's necessarily referring to. I mean, as far as our corridor is concerned, we in our modeling, we can get 4 lanes or 2 lanes in each direction, a total of 4 lanes, and it more than adequately serves the future demand out beyond 2050.
Okay. This next one, Excellent presentation. Looking forward to the approval of option B to save our Heber Main Street and let those businesses thrive and provide a safer environment to everyone. Option B is a long-time solution. This is something we need, not a short-term disaster that option A looks to be. Hopefully the project can start sooner than later, as we are already seeing gridlock and more accidents as travelers approach the city. That would be a good one to submit as a comment. I don't see a question in there, so we'll keep moving. So thank you for chiming in. Next question, wouldn't UDOT want to get the project done before the Olympics?
I know that there is a lot of talk about the Olympics. We're not. It's outside of our process, and as far as there hasn't been any real Olympic funding that's been allocated to any projects, any transportation projects. So we're looking at this in a normal process and how we would build it in a normal process.
Okay. Another comment. Thank you for all the work, research, analysis, and effort you have all put forth to arrive at this point. Appreciate the comment. Would welcome you to submit that as a formal comment. Will Highway 40 remain as Highway 40, or will the bypass be renamed Highway 40?
That we get this question quite often. While we're not looking at a route reassignment as part of the environmental document, and that's something that could happen down the road later. But we are putting together the corridor is designed and in such a way that it could be designated as the future US 40 route. But it's not something that we're directly looking at it with this study.
Yeah, and I would just maybe tag on that is one of the differences between alternative A and B, because B does a better job of attracting that regional traffic and acting as a regional facility. It is more likely that would be approved with alternative B than with alternative A.
The next one is another comment about 13th South, noting the number of homes that would be impacted, suggesting an alternate route. Again, that's to our earlier discussion. We would love for you to submit your suggestion. The team did look at a number of different routes on the south end, but we can compare that to those that have already been looked at and see if there's something that we missed. So please submit that one as a question. In review of the noise study, it was noted that the sound walls would need to be voted on if needed in the future. Is that correct? So a sound wall question, process question, maybe Naomi or Tyler?
Yeah, so balloting does take place. It's voting on the noise walls closer to construction. Once we're to that point, we want the people who are involved in that to be the ones to be able to put their voice forward. And if somebody moves out and moves in, we just want to make sure it's as close to the construction time as possible. So yes, once final design is going forward and those walls are finalized, then we'll go for balloting, and then the residents get to vote for or against those walls that are impacted and benefited.
Thanks, Tyler. This next one perhaps was submitted in tandem with the other specific example of wetland question. And Naomi, it's about specific examples of what mitigation looks like. How will you prevent creating disconnected small wetland areas? I don't know if there's anything additional you want to add there, given the specificity.
No, I mean, I guess I would say, like every mitigation requires a plan. And so it's not, you can't just say, we're going to do this and that. There's an actual plan that's set forth that needs to be approved in addition to kind of determined ratios. And I think the value of having a contiguous mitigation area versus a bunch of pockets is definitely part of the decision-making process. To the extent that we would need to acquire the land, we don't necessarily have the ability to stipulate that it all be contiguous, but I think that is part of the goal, is that it be as contiguous an area as possible to avoid exactly what you're talking about, those kind of small pockets that have reduced wetland and overall ecological value. So.
Great. This is a process question. Is there a way for you to separate the Zoom meetings and the in-person meetings so that if someone is traveling or working for one, they can try to make it to the other rather than having them one day after the other? Um, I'll take a stab and then someone can chime in. In this case, the answer would be no. We're pretty well set on the in-person meeting tomorrow, but that's something that we could consider in the future. There are some timing considerations that we have to take into account, from when notice is given to the public and the availability of the EIS, how much notice is required before the meetings take place. And then we want to leave time for people to become educated and then provide comment. And so trying to hit that sweet spot often results in having meetings pretty close to each other. But anything anyone wants to add to that, or should we keep moving?
Keep moving.
Okay. Thank you for the question. These are all very good questions and comments. We appreciate your input. Um, this one we answered earlier. Do you take our comments into account when making decisions? Maybe I'd suggest that when this is posted tomorrow, if you happen to miss the answer to that, it's going to be right around 6:40-ish timestamp. If you wanted to, that's the time of day. Not going to help in scrolling through the video, unfortunately, but it's maybe about the midway point. Where are the acres of the mitigation ratio allocated? Can the community decide? How do we truly keep land preserved along the corridor? Maybe the community decision point there is a new question, Naomi.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, the ratios are determined as part of the kind of the permitting process through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and that they have multiple factors that they weigh in, to determine that ratio. And it's not a process that we provide the information, they determine what the ratios are. I think we also, I guess I want to just maybe clarify, we think that there are benefits to the mitigation, the wetland mitigation, beyond just mitigating for the wetland impacts, in terms of also potentially preserving part of the North Fields and helping to kind of provide some protections against development. However, the regulatory goal of the purpose of wetland mitigation is to comply with the Clean Water Act.
Thank you, Naomi. Maybe this is probably a quick design question. Will noise dampening road surfaces be used on both alternatives?
That's I guess there's maybe a final design question a little bit there, but we normally use I think we're planning on using asphalt on this project. I think that's what we're assuming, and it'd be following our normal UDOT specifications.
Okay. Craig said with alternate B, there would be no additional access along the new bypass, which would limit development along the new route. However, my understanding that US 40 is a limited access highway. In the future, will accesses be allowed off of Highway 40 into the North Fields? Fitzgerald Road was added to the east, so I question the future roads to the west between Highway 40 and alternative Route B.
The existing access that exists along existing 40 today will remain in place. We're not planning to change that access along existing 40. This just goes for the new corridor and the restricted access that we have there that we'll be putting in place with that.
Great, thank you, Craig. Who do we need to advocate for funding for this project? Heber City Council, Wasatch County Council, state representatives? Bit of a political question.
All the above?
Yeah, it seems to be, in my experience in the transportation world, a united, coordinated effort for when it comes to any funding question.
Right.
Okay. Are the corridors described being protected from further development? In the past 30 years, there were projected corridors identified, but have since been encroached on.
From a UDOT perspective, when we build limited access highways, those are in a sense property rights that we purchase from those adjacent from those properties as we build the highway. And so, our intent is to put as much protection on that access as we possibly can. Now, there's still land use questions that fall within the jurisdiction of the local governments that can determine how those development patterns happen. But from a UDOT perspective, our goal is to limit that access and do everything we can to keep that as limited access and limit those access points through those right-of-way actions.
Great. Well, we added our 10 minutes. We're now at 7:40. To be true to our word, we need to conclude the Q&A portion at this point. There are a number of remaining questions. As we indicated earlier, we would invite you to either submit those as a formal comment through one of the options we have available, or again, we'd invite you to come to our public meeting tomorrow night. It's in person. It's at the high school. It will run from just pulling up my schedule. I've got too many times and dates in my head. Anyone want to chime in and help me out?
Yeah, we'll have an open house portion running from 5:30 to 8:30, and so that will be in the high school library. But then at the same time, just right next door in the large lecture hall that they have there, starting at 6 p.m., we'll run through a similar presentation like this. And Justin, you might have to fact check me because I got a lot of numbers too, but I'm pretty sure it's 6. 6 to 6:30-ish, just giving everybody an overview for people that just might be new coming into the project. And then the remaining time will be allotted for the hearing portion. No, that one my brain's a little fuzzy on if we're going straight till the end of the open house. Let me pull up. And actually,
So I've got the hearing participant guide pulled up,
cool.
Bree. It's open house begins at 5:30, runs
Yep.
till 8:30. Presentation in the auditorium will start at 6, and then the formal hearing will be from 6:30 to 7:30. And we'll also have the option to speak to a court reporter to submit a comment that way in the open house. So you'll have an opportunity to be on the record with a court reporter transcribing your comment in both locations tomorrow night.
Have we mentioned that people can sign up if they want to make comments at the public hearing? They can sign up now on our website, or they can or they'll have opportunity to sign up tomorrow at the meeting. But if they like to make sure they're on that list, they can definitely start doing that now on our website.
Yeah, good addition, Craig. I'll note also that don't feel like you need to stand in front of the mic and speak for your comment to matter. As Naomi alluded to earlier, all comments, no matter format or timing received, will be considered. The team will read them all, they'll consider them, and they'll be responded to in some form in the FEIS, the final environmental impact statement. Again, tomorrow, the recording of this meeting will be on the website. You can submit formal comments there. And all of the options for how to submit comment are available on the website as well, if you're looking for the one that's most convenient for you. Again, we invite you to the high school tomorrow. And I'd just like to turn the time over to Craig for some final remarks, but I just want to say thank you. Again, the involvement of this community has been outstanding throughout the whole process, and the DEIS process has been no exception. So with that, Craig, I'll turn it to you for any final words.
Yeah, no, I echo those sentiments, Justin. Our team has been involved with this for a number of years now. We've done a lot of work. But this time now, the next 60 odd days until March 9th, it's really our time to really sit back and listen and to your comments and hear your comments and answer your questions. And so really, really grateful for the comments and the questions that we've gotten this evening and the comments we've received so far. And we really look forward to seeing more of you and hearing from more of you tomorrow and throughout throughout this comment period. This has been super beneficial and helpful for us. So I think with that, we'll say goodnight and look forward to meeting some of you tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.